Hey everybody, the game we're talking about today deals with some kind of dark themes, including drug overdose, suicide, and murder. And if you're kind of not in the headspace for something like that, feel free to give this one a miss or come back when you're feeling more ready for it. Thanks a lot. See you in the episode.
Welcome to the Adventure Mechanics. I'm Chandler,
I'm Devin.
And I'm Tom.
and today we'll be talking about the side-scrolling shoot 'em up, I guess, Deadbolt. Deadbolt is a game where you walk from floor to floor on a 2D plane and take out a number of undead. You pick up a number of weapons, and they all have their advantages and disadvantages, like any good gun game. And the secret sauce of it is that you're as lethal as you are frail. Like, you could take one hit from anything, and you're dead.
Zero room for error.
Yeah, definitely zero room for error. And it's a. I think you described it very well, Devin, when you said it's a puzzle game with execution.
You have to figure out the puzzle of how to take out everyone in the level or achieve your goal if it's not killing everyone without dying.
That's actually a really good way to describe it. For context, Deadbolt was released in 2016 by Hopu Games. It had a demo on itch.io for probably a year before that, just to kind of gauge interest and get some playtesters to engage with the game early. After Deadbolt was released, they took the demo down, and its initial release was somewhat disappointing for the company. They ended up wanting to do more with it, but they just didn't have that initial interest they needed to kind of work on the game longer, so they ended up working on other titles after that. That's not to say that the game was abandoned after release, though. It has a robust level editing system built into the game itself. So the community built up around that, and custom levels for the game have been released pretty much ever since the game was initially released to the world. It was also ported to PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, and Nintendo Switch. That's kind of the history of Deadbolt. How about we go into the story of the game?
Okay.
In Deadbolt, you play as something called the Reaper, which in the artwork of the game is a character that is in a brown trench coat, really spindly, and has a skull without a bottom jaw. And your goal throughout the game is to eliminate the undead in this world called the Place, which I think you said, Devin, that was heavily inspired by Greek hell. Is
Well,
that right?
I mean, the ancient Greeks didn't have a hell; they had an underworld. But yes, it is heavily inspired by that, with a dash of the place is hell. It's the underworld, but also the existence of the people who have found themselves there. They are living in hell. But there are like a lot of things in the Greek underworld that could be considered, to be hell, a hellish existence by that definition. But yeah.
And I guess I should be a little bit more precise about that. The undead of this world are people who've died via unnatural means. The first group that you encounter are zombies, and they basically just look like green gangsters in the game itself. But the reason they ended up in the Place is because they ended their lives by overdosing on whatever drug while they were alive. And they continue to do so in the Place. There's a drug that they're addicted to called ash that they keep overdosing on, and they get in cahoots with the vampires, and you kind of figure that out through the first act of the game. And then once you're introduced to the vampires, they are those who were murdered by their lover, either in fits of jealousy or planned or whatever. They are very sexualized in this, and not in a like nudity sort of way. The lore of the game basically says that because they died at their lover's hand, they end up wanting to kind of relive the passion, the lust sort of thing. So they end up being like the second bad guy group in the game, which in the second act, you figure out that they are the ones that produce the ash in a very macabre sort of way. The third group that you're introduced to are the skeletons, which are people who ended their lives, i.e.,
They died by suicide.
died by suicide. Yeah, sorry, I was trying to think of the updated phrase on that one. But they died by suicide, and
They unalived themselves.
Yes, they unalive themselves.
they certainly unalive themselves. And they always feel cold because they're just bones in the place. But they also have the ability to resurrect. And when they do it to another skeleton, the one doing the resurrection feels warmth for a short period of time. But if they attempt to resurrect either the zombies or the vampires, they turn them to ash in the game. There's these pillars that they put in nightclubs, in vampire nightclubs, that turn everybody in the nightclub to ash. That's the big reveal of the second act of the game. In the third act of the game, you are introduced to demons, which are, I guess, interlopers in the place, because they don't actually inhabit the place naturally. They're brought over by boat, and they absolutely fear the water because of the ferryman Charon. Is that how you say it?
Charon?
Sorry.
Charon? Charon? I had to think of like Greek.
They absolutely fear the ferryman because the ferryman will take them into the water and they'll drown there. So that's a huge bit of the lore for them. All of this is in service of the big bad, however, named Isban.
I thought it was Ibzan.
Ibzan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ibzan, yeah.
Yeah. Ibzan is a former reaper like yourself who decided to end his quote-unquote suffering in the place because he no longer was getting missions from the last bit of the lore puzzle here, which are the candles, which are basically like, I guess would be like the Greek gods, almost, in this context.
To me it seemed more like some other kind of eldritch entity that metes out justice in the place and keeps some kind of natural order. That was my interpretation. I don't know that I don't know that it is exactly a one-to-one with Greek myth. Like, Charon obviously is. Like, Charon is a direct reference, but the rest of it, I don't necessarily think it is a one-to-one. But the flames are definitely some kind of deity, some kind of extra-dimensional entity that keeps things in some kind of lawful balance.
And they're also the entity that gives you the missions throughout the game. And the climax of the game is Ibzan making his way all the way to the Flames sanctuary, and you having to fight him right above the Flames sanctuary. At the end of the battle, Ibzan ends the game with saying, "I just wanted to feel warm." And then you go down and talk to your Flames overlord, and they say, "You've done good work, it's time to rest." And then it drops you back into your flat that you have kind of been building up over the course of the game. So that's kind of a short, rambly version of the story arc of the game. There is a video that I'll be linking in the description that kind of goes over it in a little bit better detail that I kind of drew some information from. But for the Cliff Notes version, that's sufficient, I think. It's kind of a convoluted story, and it's actually really clever, but you don't actually have to engage with the story at all to enjoy the game. When I first played the itch.io demo that they put out, I actually just enjoyed the gameplay itself and didn't even make any notice of the obvious Greek references of, like, the three-headed dogs that you fight in the game, the ferryman named Charon. Just completely missed all of those and just thought this was not in a different area. This was like an underworld situation where there's these monsters in the night and you're one of the monsters to help keep the world safe. And yeah, I completely missed that. all the references. So you can enjoy the game without the story. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've never been one that pays super close attention to story in any game that I play. I am a bad person. Don't
Oh
judge me.
no. How
I
how
know.
could you? I am judging you so hard right now. So hard.
Um,
I don't know if we
I
can still be friends.
honestly, I'm not even surprised coming from you. I feel bad. Anyway, so yeah, for me, gameplay is by far the more important than story. Again, sorry, it's necessary for me to be able to really enjoy, like, have a really engaging gameplay, and Deadbolt has a really addicting gameplay. You don't need to pay attention to the story to thoroughly enjoy the game. The challenges themselves, the puzzles themselves are, I mean, if that was all the game was, I'd be fully invested. The fact that there is a really cool fleshed out story and, with references to, myths and mythology, just extra. It's like icing on the cake. It's a beautiful, beautiful combination.
Absolutely. The game is difficult too. Like,
Oh,
absolutely difficult.
yeah. But not too difficult. It does creep up on you. You have time to learn it. You have time to master it. But it's kind of old school in that, like, it gets hard and gets really hard. This thing doesn't, like, it's not like a lot of modern games where it's like, well, even if you're, like, absolutely terrible at gaming, you can make it all the way to the end. Like, no, it's going to take some work, which is good.
Yeah, but it also kind of points out like a skill floor, right? Because I know you tried it, Devin, and it was just one of those games where you could see the puzzle, but you couldn't necessarily execute on how to execute or how to get there, right?
Yeah, it just was not the game for me. I have not the skill nor the coordination to engage with the game the way that it wanted me to. So I really struggled and then ended up giving up. Because I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to keep beating my head against this, and I can see what the problem is, and that is that it's just not made for someone like me, and that is okay. But yes, it is very difficult, and I would say that if you're not very skillful or not able to build skill like that, you might bounce off of it, like I did. I just don't have, and there's not really any accessibility options to,
No.
slow the pace or change up settings. Like, I think whether or not that's a good or bad thing is a totally different discussion. I don't mind. I think, the game is what it is, and it just wasn't for me, and that's okay. I can watch a playthrough with friends playing it, or, find a playthrough on the YouTube and find the lore there as well. So yeah, it was too difficult for me. It was too skillful, and I just couldn't do it.
I don't consider myself to be an excellent gamer. I consider myself to be a fairly mediocre gamer. I think what you need in order to succeed at that game is fairly decent Twitch reactions. Having some first-person shooter experience is probably mandatory.
I don't know, hundreds of hours of UT in Call of Duty Modern Warfare or something like that.
Chandler and I are both qualified on both accounts.
Yeah.
I'm not a big first-person shooter person. That is not a game style that I tend to play very much of, if any. But I do have past history playing a lot of it with Chandler. So I don't think that you need to be excellent at first-person shooters in order to enjoy the game. But I do agree with Devin that you have to have some experience. If you've never used a mouse to aim at something before, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know that I don't know. I don't know that it was necessarily, like, because I'm passable with first-person shooters. Like, I'm not, like, pro
Fair.
level or anything. I'm passable at it. It was just the way that how you had to keep everything moving so fast on the screen and having to be intensely aware of where your mouse cursor is on the screen, not just the
Yes.
relative position of your gun on the character model of the Reaper. I think it probably would have been a little easier for me if it wasn't reliant on you need to know where the cursor is at all times and you need to place it purposefully. You can't just, like, point and shoot,
Yeah, I mean,
2D point and shooty. So it's engaging in a little bit more specific, I think, shooting mechanics in that way.
Oh yeah, it requires a lot of accuracy. It isn't It isn't like some of the old school games where you can just kind of like what you're describing, where it's like you have like shooting sideways diagonally and up, or it's not like it's not forgiving. Your character is very small, and excuse me, you can see a large amount of the map at a time. All the characters that you're attacking are very small, and in order to hit a headshot in the game, your cursor has to essentially be sitting directly on top of their head, not close to it. Even if you're like a little bit off on distance, the further your cursor is away from the enemy, the less and less accurate your character becomes. So you can have it lined up correctly, where like if you draw a line from your character's gun through to your cursor, if the enemy's head is in that line, you have a chance of getting a headshot. But it's the further your cursor is away from that enemy, the lower your odds are of doing it. There's some amount of accuracy change. So it's a game of like precision. And I think that's kind of what I mean is like you need to be able to snap to a target and then click and snap to another target and then click and be very quick about it. The game is super unforgiving. If you aren't really fast, the enemies that you're going up against are really fast, and if they hit you one time, that's it. Your entire run is over. You start over.
Yep. And when you die, you just start at the beginning of the level too.
Yep, you have to completely. So it doesn't matter how far into it you got. Doesn't matter. There's no checkpoints. You begin again, at least for that level. So like, you have to be very accurate and very fast. For anyone that's played a lot of first-person shooters and become in like fast-paced ones, because there's like first-person shooters like let's say like Fallout. Those tend to be pretty forgiving. And then there's games like like Unreal Tournament where like no forgiveness.
Yeah. You're either faster or dead.
Exactly. It's more of the Unreal Tournament. Except instead of in 3D space, it's a 2D shooter. But either way, the skills are kind of the same, which is fun. I mean, for a lot of people, that's something that, you can get into that. It's fun, but it's hard. So be aware of that if you're going to play this game.
Yeah, well, there's also this interesting, like dynamic there, right? So you are incredibly frail and one shot will kill you, but when you are very, very practiced on a level, you end up feeling like a god. Like, you know exactly where all the enemies are, you know exactly when to shoot them, you know exactly when to run through that automatically closing door so you don't get line of sight and shot in the back. It almost feels like you're doing a dance when you know how the level is supposed to work. And it feels really good to do it.
Oh, yeah. It gives you an excellent, like, I don't know how to explain that, but you're right. The feeling is excellent. It's like an efficiency feeling. How do I describe that? When you nail a playthrough, you're like, it gives you that hero feeling of like, oh my god, I just kicked so much butt.
Yeah. Yeah, like all the plans came to fruition perfectly to make your run go through. And then at the end of it, you get ranked on 1 to 5 stars, and despite feeling great about it, you end up with a 2 or 3 star run. Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the other parts of this game that's kind of showing its hand in terms of inspirations, at least in my opinion, is at the end of each level, the kind of results screen. It shows how long you've been playing it in aggregate, including the number of deaths that you've had, the number of kills that you've had on your last run, the amount of headshots that you've had, the amount of shots that hit any enemy in the level, and then it kind of aggregates those into the 1 to 5 star system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very much arcadey, and it feels arcadey because of that.
And I will say, from the accessibility standpoint, there is one piece that makes it a little bit accessible, which is, this isn't true for all maps. There are maps that are brutal. But at least to begin with, probably, like, I would say for the first stage, like, you start by taking out a bunch of zombies. And for the first few maps, it kind of lets you take your time. You're going to get a bad score, because it is time-based. But you can kind of, like, break it down into, like, sections, where you're kind of like, okay, I have to kill this guy, and then I can chill, and I can think about my next move. So if you're the kind of person that enjoys planning very carefully, and like, this is actually, honestly, this is what drew me to it. I don't have the best scores in the game. I'm not the fastest because I lack the first person shooter skills to be able to be that quick. But what I do enjoy is like I can kind of go, okay, so this section, if I take out this part, you can do some strategy. If you take out this part of this, that clears that area. I don't have to worry about that area anymore. It becomes safe. I can go park myself in that area for as long as I need to think about my next move. And you can play it really slowly and strategically. And so what I found myself doing is kind of doing that for the first playthrough to kind of figure out the map and like learn different strategies. And then once I succeeded, then I could go back and play it again and kind of be like, okay, now that I know how to win, let's see if I can figure out how to win faster. So I think that is kind of the accessibility like slider. There's no way to adjust the difficulty, but you can certainly you could spend 3 hours completing a single map and the game will still consider it a success. You'll just get 1 star.
I would disagree with calling that an accessibility thing, but it's certainly the game does give you time to figure things out.
It's as close to accessibility as I think the game is going to hand you. How about that?
That's not a whole lot of accessibility regardless, though.
It's, I mean, and for the listeners, because Chandler and Tom already know this, I tapped out after taking 48 minutes to complete the tutorial, where the game is about as hand-holdy as it can possibly be. And I was just like, no, I don't think so. I tried the first level and went, no, this just isn't the game for me.
Which is totally fine.
So again, it's not for everybody, and that's okay. I feel like accessibility is a very specific thing to make a game accessible to the most people possible. So even though the game, in early levels, like gives you time and gives you places to like plan your attack, that assumes that you can actually play the game and get to that point.
I guess that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. That's why I'm like pushing against you saying that it's accessibility. Like it certainly does things in those early levels to help you prepare and help you learn, what the game is asking of you and what you'll need to do in later levels, especially when it adds more complicated mechanics like the phylacteries, and enemies that are more tanky, other enemies that move quickly. But yeah, it just accessibility is a very specific, I think, definition for a specific thing.
As Devin pointed out, there's not really any of that in this game. Keep in mind, at the time, Hopu Games was like their second release, I think, that they had. I think they did Risk of Rain before this, but this was their second release. So being a tiny studio of like, I think 2 people or 3 people at the time, they didn't have a whole lot of consideration on the accessibility front, because that's something that experience really gives indies. And a lot of indies that start off do not consider that.
Yeah. Well, and it could be that, again, like I think the discussion of like accessibility and, difficulty settings and that sort of thing, I think that's a discussion to be had on its own. And it's kind of an ongoing discussion, but and there's a big consideration for like, the creator's vision and like what they want the game to be. And if they want to be a game that tests your skill and coordination and your reaction time and your ability to do these things on the fly with like, Twitch reactions, if that's what they wanted, that's what they did. And I think that they built a game around that concept that really does test those things. And it works. But that will, obviously not everyone will want to play that game, and some people won't be able to.
Certainly.
So I'm not saying like, oh, I can't believe that they don't have accessibility options. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. It's just a fact. There isn't any. And
yeah,
that is going to be a barrier to some people. It was a barrier to me. But at the same time, I can, I'm kind of disappointed I didn't get further. Like, I knew because of what the game was, and because, in our earlier conversations, I compared it a lot to Hotline Miami. It's very much like Hotline Miami in a number of ways. And that with Hotline Miami, I didn't get all the way through that because I did hit a point where it was just like, I can't get past this. I'm not good enough. So I figured that this game would be the same, where it was like, well, I'll play through a few levels, and then at some point it'll be very difficult, and I won't be able to do it. I just didn't expect that to be the tutorial. Like, I didn't expect to, like, you know, be like half an hour deep into the tutorial. It's like, you know, my 45th time restarting the level and going, you know, this might be a sign. And that's okay. Again, that's okay. But the tutorial told me a lot about the game and what it needed from me, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to give it to it. And that's okay. Like, you know, which is why I say I think the developers, if that's what they were going for, they built up a game around that really works with that idea in mind. It just, you know, wasn't for me.
No, absolutely, they did. They did do a very good job on what vision they had for it, but I am kind of sad that the tutorial was the weeding out point for you because of this. I really did want to talk about the story specifically.
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, I was just gonna say like the story specifically, and it was interesting to me because I was kind of absorbing it in a very admittedly slow way when I was playing through it. I think I have probably about 40, 50 hours into this game at this point. And through those hours of getting my poor Reaper murdered in various comical ways and stupid ways, I did kind of absorb some of the story of it. And it is a fascinating story, even with me mangling it, I think.
Well, the cool thing about, you know, the age that we live in with, you know, YouTube and lore hunters and such like, people making videos, I was able to look into the story because I did want to see more about that. And I think the story's really interesting. I think their world building is really interesting. And I did kind of enjoy, like, even though I didn't get to, discover that and explore that for myself, like, I still think it was cool to go and look at that and be like, oh, neat. Like, there's a lot of thought that went into the world building and, you know, the references and, you know, and they don't answer all of the questions either, which I think is really neat. Like, there's like, you know, what actually do Reapers do beyond, you know, keeping the peace, if you will, in the place? What is the entity that is the flames? You know, what purpose does that serve? Like, is this a order chaos thing? Like, is this an eldritch thing? Is it a little bit more like, you know, a little bit more Christian flavored, a little Abrahamic flavored with, you know, is this, you know, higher level like angel stuff, or is this more eldritch, or is this more something else? Because, like, you know, like we pointed out, like, Charon is a character there. The dogs have 3 heads. There's a lot of references to Greek mythology and the Greek underworld. I thought it was interesting, like, how, like, oh, why are there zombies and vampires and skeletons in this world? How is the society of the place, you know, structured around these things? That these are people who died in horrible ways, really, ultimately, and that they come into this existence in this place, and it's like, this existence is hell. Like, their existence is horrible. Like, if you die of OD, you end up in the place as a zombie, and you just continue to be addicted. And it's very hopeless. If you have unalived yourself, you wake up in the place as a skeleton, and you cannot die. Your existence will never end. You will be freezing cold and miserable for the rest of your life. Because if you try to unalive yourself again, you will be resurrected.
By another skeleton, because by doing that, they can feel that living warmth, however briefly. And then, of course, you know, the vampires, like, they are constantly in this state of hedonism, you know, because they were killed by their lover in the mortal world. It's horrible. Like, everything about this is terrible, and you have to question, like, what is the Flames' agenda? You know, what is going on? Who are the Reapers? And then you have the tragedy of Ibzan, who was a Reaper and then unalived himself and then has been desperate to get back to the warmth of the Flames. By whatever nature governs the world, the Flames cannot allow that to happen, and Ibzan must be obliterated and never be warm again and just be ended. Yeah.
And it's like, that's tragic. And you have these little hints that something's like, something happened, like whatever it was that happened with Ibzan, like you have these hints that like Ibzan's existence as a Reaper was miserable, and that, he lived to speak with the flames, which was just on the flames agenda. Then, and then he unalives himself. And then your character, the player character, the Reaper that you play, you have this flat that's got a bunch of boxes, and then between levels, there's like a bed, there's a phonograph, there's I think a cat at one point, a little pixel cat that's in there,
Yep.
and it's sort of like the flat is becoming more and more lived in and more comfortable. The chair that the Reaper sits in front of the fireplace is this sort of plush wingback chair. When you see Ibzan's apartment, it's austere. There's like a folding chair and like a cot, and then the bricked over fireplace. And it's like, oh, like, did the flames entity, whatever that is, not realize that things that are human or human adjacent need warmth and entertainment and something, and that's why Ibzan just attached to these flames and just wanted all the time to speak to the flames, because there was nothing that he had. And so the Flames has somehow learned from that and is now giving the new Reaper, like, oh, you've accomplished a mission. Yes, you've accomplished a mitten. Have a kitten. I have granted unto you this beautiful little black cat. Also, I got you a bed while you were gone. My candle servant has dragged it in for you. Like, this isn't said, but it kind of looks that way. And so you're like, oh, like, so the Flames knew something, but that doesn't mean there's no latitude for Ibzan. And Ibzan's obsession with getting into the mortal world and then finding the flames.
Yeah.
It's tragic. I love it. It's good stuff, yeah. I think it's really, really interesting.
It's a really fascinating story because of that, too. Like, I was kind of talking about this earlier, but my first probably 2 or 3 playthroughs, I didn't make any connection with the lore itself. And as I kind of connected with the story through the cassettes that you collect, because they're like randomly dropped collectibles from specific enemies in the game, they kind of give more flavor to the world. And it's kind of an admittedly cheap way to get you to replay certain levels that are sometimes really, really difficult, and ones that, if given a choice, you probably wouldn't even 5-star or attempt to 5-star and just move on with your life. But yeah, those cassettes really kind of just dangle this really rich lore and history that you want to know more about in the game, and they just dangle it there like any good collectible should.
Mm-hmm.
Ibzan's story is really tragic in this game, and like, this entire game is really tragic, for lack of a better, like,
the whole thing is dark. It's dark and tragic, just across the board.
Yeah, like, almost deliciously so. Like, even the candles are servants to the flames, and the way that they're drawn in the game, they're basically like a candle. You could see the age of the candle by how close the fire is to the base of the candle. It's a really fascinating kind of, I don't want to say character, but like creature study, right? Where the life is inverse to the height. And that's just fascinating to me. That's kind of stuck in my mind since I first started playing this game and encountered the first candle, which I think was actually delivering the cassette thing into your flat.
Mm-hmm.
You might be able to see them in the world before that, but you don't interact with them. They're like almost static props early on in the game. They're watching you do your job early in the game, making sure that you're going to work out as a Reaper or something like that. Interestingly enough, you don't see the candles again until they're actively supporting you towards the climax of the game. Just another little bit of that story that's just so very good in this game. And I know you mentioned this while we were talking before the podcast, Evan, but like, you made a really good point that the eldritch horror that is the Flames actively like gives you stuff as a Reaper to keep you sharp as a tool and make sure that you're not going to go Ibzan on them.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, which kind of is which is kind of an interesting when you consider the end. Like, you've killed Ibzan. Ibzan says, "I just wanted to be warm," and you're left with that. You go back to the flames, and the flames entity is like, you know, you've done good work, but now it's time to rest. And then all the lights go out, and every candle flame one by one, and it's just like,
Very strange ending.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, that's and especially the, you know, yeah, like, you did a good job, time to rest, like, you know, well done, but, you know, all is darkness now. It's very interesting, especially as, you know, the flames have been seeming to bring you things to keep you happy, so that you'll keep doing the job that you're supposed to do, as you said, to keep you as a tool sharp enough for use and not defect.
I was just aping what you said, so
Yeah.
Don't give me credit for it.
Oh, okay. Well, as I said, that you said.
Wait, this line is getting really confusing.
The Ouroboros of ideas and.
Yeah, something like that. So tell me, Tom, did you get any of that story while you were playing?
So I didn't finish the game, so that's definitely important to note. And in defense of what you were saying earlier, Devin, frankly, the game started after I haven't quite cleared the vampires, which is kind of like the second chapter. So you've done a bunch of the zombies, and it just started getting really hard. So I haven't finished it. I still enjoyed it. So just to be clear, even though I haven't finished it, like, still have thoroughly enjoyed it and will be revisiting it. But because I haven't finished the story, I don't have quite as much to say about it. I'm like halfway through. The story that is there is very cool. It's very text-based and a little slow. And if you're the kind of person that likes to, like, kind of read things and then read into things and kind of, like, deep dive into the lore of stuff, it's super cool. I am more of the type of person that's kind of like, there is story happening here, but I just want to solve the next puzzle. All right, let's go. So
I think we've proven that with our playthrough of, what was it? Where you were trapped in the museum.
Yeah. Yeah, story for me either has to be very, like, auditory and visual, you know, with cutscenes and that kind of thing, and I can get really into that. If it's a lot of reading and stuff, it's a rare game that I will get super involved. There are games like that, don't get me wrong, but for me, for this, most of it was I was kind of like skimming over and kind of reading the story and just getting excited about the next puzzle. How do I kill the next guy? I'd read enough to know kind of what I was supposed to be doing, and, you know, like, it gives you kind of like I think they call it intel, where it's just like, all right, so this next one, you need to know this piece in order to solve the puzzle. You know, it's like there's a certain new type of character that you're not going to be able to kill unless you kill their phylactery, which, you know, like, I said that wrong, didn't I?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Phylactery?
Phylactery. Ugh, it's not a common word. Anyway, so you have to, like, kill, like, a little jar in order to actually wipe them out for good, or else they keep coming back to life. Like, stuff like that. So you have to read at least some of that stuff. I definitely paid attention to that. I didn't pay that much attention to the story. Sorry, guys.
Well, that's perfectly fair. Like,
the game is still good without it. That's the takeaway.
Yeah, and in full disclosure to, like, the listeners, Tom got stuck on the Amber and Evelyn level, and for anybody that actually has played this game, that is one of the harder levels of the game. Like, it's a noticeable spike in difficulty. You're like, the level before it's hard, but not, like, super hard, and then this one comes in and is like, okay, you have to beat this with almost no ammunition, and each one is a phylactery for the other. Good luck.
Yeah, so basically there's 2 towers, and you have to kill at the very top of each tower. There are 2 people, and you have to, or 1 person each. You have to kill them within, what would you say, 15 seconds of each other?
Like 15 to 30 seconds, yeah.
Yeah, so you have to, like, fight your way up one tower, kill someone, fight your way up one tower, wipe it out, fight your way up the other tower and clear it out. At least this is how I did it, because I'm slow. And then after you've cleared out most of the bad guys or whatever, you can kill one of them, and then there's a pipe you have to unlock. That's the other thing. You have to unlock this pipe on both sides. So you have to get up to the top on both sides in order to be able to fast travel between the two. And so, yeah, I killed everyone in one tower, including the person I was supposed to kill. Went back over to the other side, killed everyone in that tower, opened that pipe, which by that time the first person had resurrected. So I killed the second person and then flew back over and killed the first person. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's really hard. Chandler's right. The difficulty level spikes very sharply in that level, and after that gets easier again. From a design perspective, I would say if I were to give any critique of the game, I'd say that level, or at least that concept for that level, might have been better served later in the game. Because
Yeah.
it's where I stopped playing on my first playthrough, and then I spent over an hour playing it on the second playthrough and needed Chandler's help to get through it, and it is brutal.
It was so much fun watching it on potato quality too.
Yeah, through Discord screaming.
Yeah.
Streaming. Blah.
Well, it might as well have just been screaming because it was like, what, 72p or something when we were watching it? It's like, oh,
Yeah,
look, here's a little block. It's moving around. Oh, the block got smaller. I think he died.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that was particularly funny to watch. Like, it was kind of like watching a sports game in like with really bad reception. Like, you kind of know what's going on, but you don't really know the details. You just get the broad strokes, and you're hoping that you can fill it in later. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, for anyone who might be listening who has experience with televisions that use the rabbit ears to receive signal as you're trying to like wiggle the rabbit ears around to try and get picture, and it's like kind of there but really staticky and weird. You can kind of see this ghost of a shape
Yeah.
on the screen. I don't know that
Why?
anyone listening to this would have memory of that, which well, if you're listening to this and you have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about, go look that up. It's fun.
I have no idea why it was streaming at such poor quality. I have gigabit internet, but apparently Discord just
know.
did not want to provide that to me. So
It might have just been just a weird thing. But yeah, well, because like the last time you were streaming over Discord, you were streaming Forza, and there was no problem. It looked great.
it just didn't like me that day.
Maybe Discord was trying to save your pride. Like, oh no, he's really struggling with this level.
I'll smear Vaseline all over this stream so nobody can see your failure. The difficulty in this game is definitely one of the things that does inevitably make it less accessible. Like, it's a hard game, but
Yeah.
I think if they moved some levels around or added more tools to work with on certain levels, it would make the game significantly easier. Like, specifically on the Two Towers example, they give you exactly 3 weapons on top of what you bring in: 2 pistols and a hammer. And then if you want anything else beyond that, you have to kill like 2 or 3 extra people, and that's about that's all you're gonna get. So you run a very, very real risk of running out of ammunition and just having to punch somebody to death because you ran out of ammunition. You got nothing else. And let me remind you that your character is frail. So it feels like you're a toddler punching a linebacker sometimes. It's really sad, and on more than one occasion ended up like punching somebody just to try and end it all, but I didn't want to just give up and let them like take me out. But yeah, it's a very interesting feeling.
Oh man, I've let plenty of people just take me out. I had a few times like that where I was like, well, this run is ruined. Kill me.
I need a restart and you're faster.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing that I am not going to let pass on this talk, though, is the music.
Oh,
The
gosh,
music is
yeah.
amazing.
Oh,
Yes.
the music is so good.
It is by far one of my favorite tracks of any game I've ever played. Like, I still listen to it to this day. And that's kind of an honorific that I don't give a lot of video games. Like, I'll occasionally listen to a video game soundtrack, but I won't listen to it, like, regularly. Deadbolt is one of those, because it is like I don't know, like a dark groove rock almost. It's very rhythmic, and it's kind of in the music. I am absolutely butchering the description of this. Somebody please save me.
I mean, it's kind of got this like lo-fi electronic rock.
It's really hard to define.
It is,
It
and
is.
I'm like, oh god, I need to pull some up so I can like feel like I feel like, because I've listened to it. It's just like I don't know what I'm talking about now. I sound like I'm real smart, but it's really good. Look it up. It's very good music.
It's kind of swanky and also gritty at the same time.
It's
Is
like
that a good way of putting it?
Yeah.
yeah, it's like dark vapor, not vaporwave, dark retrowave kind of.
Yeah, that could describe it. Yeah, it has a lot of different style tracks, which I think is one of the reasons why we're all kind of struggling and flailing on how to describe this amazing sound. But at the end of the day, it's your companion throughout all of these hundreds of attempts at every level, right? And they chose like a good amount of tracks so it doesn't feel like it's ever like in your face. It's very much like you were saying, Devin, Hotline Miami in that regard as well. The music just never stops, and it's eminently loopable music, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so good.
All of it does appear to be on YouTube. You can listen to it. It's on the composer's page. Christodoulou. I'm so sorry if I have mispronounced your name. If you ever happen to hear this,
I'm so glad that you were brave enough to try that one. I was like, I'm gonna put it in the show notes, but I'm not gonna try to pronounce Chris's last name.
yep, Chris, you did a great job.
Yes, you did an amazing job with it. If you even hear about this podcast, but yeah, it's also available on Bandcamp if you want to support him.
Yep.
He does the sound work on pretty much all of Hopu's games, so they got the right person for the job. Just saying. But I do want to bring back one thing. Before I continue on though, did anybody else kind of want to gush about the music some more?
It's just like, it's like really great. I was just like clicking through and like, every single track is very different. There's rock, there's like rock country, there's that sort of retro wave sound.
It does have a bit of a retro feel overall, I think. But yeah.
It gets me into that mindset of trying to execute perfectly. Maybe that's Pavlovian at this point, but it gets you into focus. And I think that's really what the game needs. Especially if you're going to be dying potentially hundreds of times on one level.
Yeah. At least the music in the tutorial level was very good. Did enjoy my whole time there. It didn't get old. Like, how sometimes if you play a game that's difficult and you're really, really struggling with one boss or one level, and sometimes you're just like, stop it with the music. Kingdom Hearts, very, very infamous for this. The Atlantica level, if you know, you know. But, it's like where you're just like, oh my god, just turn the music off so I can just try and finish this game. And I didn't feel that way, even though I was like, oh my god, this game isn't for me. But the music slaps.
I've been on the same level for almost an hour now, and I can listen to the songs more.
Yeah, which is saying something, I think, to the quality of the music, where you're just like, oh, this is nice. Music is still good, even after I'm like feeling frustrated.
Yeah, it helps soothe the pain and the frustration, at least for me.
Yeah, yeah, it's like at least the music is still good. At least I can enjoy that.
I haven't played Hotline Miami nearly as much. Like, I think I've played maybe a level of that. But I don't remember the music fitting quite as well. Like, I remember it fitting well, but not quite as well. What do you think, since you played a little bit more than me?
I mean, I don't know that I've played it that much more than you. I think it fit fine. I'm trying to think, because it's been a while since when I played it.
Fair.
But like, because I find the Hotline Miami soundtrack very listenable as well. You just put it on and listen to it. It's got that particular sound, which when I'm writing a particular thing, I want that particular sound. During gameplay, I think it fit well. I think for me, it worked. But it's been so long since I've played it that I don't know that I'll be as definitive about it. What I remember Hotline Miami is more that the soundtrack kind of blended better with the scene. Like the soundtrack wasn't trying to stand out above the action. Not that I'm saying like this one does, but I found it, even watching a walkthrough or a let's play of it, the soundtrack stood out in Deadbolt a little bit more, whereas in Hotline Miami it seems to blend more with the visuals and the action. Which, neither way is good nor bad. It's just a different approach to music. So, so when with Hotline Miami, I remember it more like being, it's there, it's cool, it works, but it's more integrated into the scene in a way that it's not necessarily standing out to you, is what I remember. Whereas from watching you guys play it, and then watching, Let's Plays of it, it's sort of, with Deadbolt, the music stood out a little bit more. And maybe it did that too because I was watching instead of like actually playing, and so I wasn't necessarily concentrating on the controls. But, yeah, I don't know. This isn't making a lot of sense.
Well, I mean,
going off of old memories and being like, I mean, it's still good though. It's like, wow, this song's really great. Like it works. Like each level has kind of its own sound to it,
and it really does make the level. Like even in some of the nightclub levels with the vampires, I found myself like just stopping for a second to listen to a particular part of the song that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, you're like, oh yeah, this is the part right here.
Yeah, and then I just got murdered. Okay,
yep.
Guess we try again.
Can't listen to the music. Gotta play game.
Yep.
Can't listen to music.
Yeah, definitely a soundtrack. It was amazing and is one of the reasons why this game is so good. At least in my opinion.
It certainly plays a role. There's no doubt of that.
Playing it without music isn't the same. I tried that for a little bit, and I was like, no, it needs to.
I think if it had like more generic music, by which I mean like music with less personality, like something that you might expect if you saw a game that looks like this, or no music, I think it just would not be engaging at all. Even with engaging world building and an interesting story and interesting, challenging gameplay, it just would not. It wouldn't. I don't think that it would grab players as much.
Oh, absolutely not.
Just the music has such personality. It has such character.
It gets you engaged in the world so much more. I do want to circle back on the accessibility issue.
Mm-hmm.
I want to kind of pick both of your minds about what would, how do I phrase this? What would make the game like better?
What would make it more accessible, you mean?
Well, not just accessible, but like better. Like what would be other things, if this is a critique of a game, which we're arguably doing, what would make it a better game for you? Not necessarily like changing it to full 3D or anything like that, but as is, what would get it closer to that top tier rank?
I mean, for me, it would really be some kind of accessibility consideration of some kind, and that doesn't necessarily mean like a difficulty slider, but I mean even something like just ways that you could toggle things on and off. Slowing down the action, like making it so that you don't have to react as fast as the game in its current state asks you to react. If you could, slow that down in some measure, or even like as a sliding scale, like that would be, even with the mechanics as is, just being able to slow action down would make it more accessible to me. Turning on some kind of thing like a one-shot kill where you don't have to expend as much ammo. For example, if you're bad at aiming and can't hit things, when you do hit things, they will die in one hit, as opposed to needing 2 or 3 hits, especially in later levels. That would be an option, or a combination thereof would be an option to try and like get the game to where, at least for me, speaking for myself, would be where it would be more accessible to me. Like, you would still have like some considerations with other things, but you could kind of toggle that on or off, and just make it an option.
Okay.
Something to that effect. But I mean, really, like even just slowing it down a little bit would be a huge thing, because you'd still have to solve the puzzles, you'd still have to pay attention to, where you're shooting and stuff, but it's not like I couldn't even, move the mouse to where I needed it to be, especially since it requires you to place your mouse so precisely to hit things. It's like, it wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, well, I knocked on the door, the guy got up, he opened the door, I smacked him in the face, I got to the other door, I knocked on the door, I was ready to shoot the guy when he came up to the door, but I have to shoot the guy behind him. And this is the tutorial level, this is part of the tutorial level. And I shoot the guy in front of me, but I can't get the shot off quick enough to get the guy behind him. And then as soon as you fire a gun, everyone on the level above you is running because they've heard gunfire, right? Like, so they're coming. So something to just slow that action down a little bit where it's like, okay, boom, boom, turn around, shoot the next guy would be easier conserving ammo too. Because one thing, you're trying to shoot the person, but you can't aim right. The zombie's coming at you and you're like, bang, 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 bang. And then you've used up all your ammo. How are you going to complete the level? You have to restart the level because there's no way that you can go upstairs and, get everyone else kind of a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a good point. Like, I think if they implemented even something like a danger bullet time, maybe.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, and maybe make the bullets bigger and slower. I know that's somewhat antithetical for what the game demands, but like a bigger, slower bullet would be more obvious of what killed you.
Yeah, well, everything we're talking about hypothetically is antithetical to what the game is. It's just sort of like hypothetically what would make it more accessible, and I think that's a good one. What about bigger, slower bullets?
What about having some kind of a snap to feature with because old school Call of Duty introduced that, where it's like if you're clicking pretty close to something, it assumes you know what you're aiming for and just gives you the shot.
Yeah, that would be
an interesting game to try. Like, I don't necessarily think that Deadbolt is, as it stands right now, would be the same game with all those accessibility features. I feel like it might end up feeling more generic, but I think a game with the same controls that Deadbolt has, but with those accessibility options, could be very interesting. And I feel like that would be something that we've kind of touched upon before, where that's buried in the options, but it's something you can turn on, right? Like, oh, this game is going to be incredibly difficult. Well, I can just turn on these assists to make it so I can get through the story part of the game.
Right. Well, I mean, and other games have done that, like Mechanicus. Warhammer 40k Mechanicus has a lot of options for tweaking the gameplay that you can set up before you play. Tunic, recently released, has a no-fail mode where you can just play it for the story and play it for the puzzle of figuring out the world and the metagame of the manual that it has. You could just, you'll still do combat, you'll still fight enemies in the overworld, but you can't fail at it. So you don't have to deal with, I've died and I have to, find my way back without a map or something to that effect. I don't have to keep trying on this boss, and it's toggleable on and off. If you're struggling with a boss and you've done it for, over half an hour and you're like, I just need to get past this so I can continue the game, you just turn it on, defeat the boss, and then you can turn it off again and continue on if you want the challenge. That's an example of a game that's done an interesting and I think really great accessibility option. And of course, there's a lot of discourse around Elden Ring right now since it came out recently. It's been out for a few weeks. How people talk about, does Elden Ring have accessibility? And it gives you a lot of different tools you can use or not, depending on what level of challenge you want in this, Souls-like game. Which I think is great. There's no difficulty slider, but, with all of the things that are in the game that can, ease the challenge for you, it doesn't mean that it's a less challenging game, but it gives you these tools that you can use within that, thing. But, I mean, there's multiple ways you can handle it depending on the kind of game. But I think we're seeing more consideration for accessibility, which is good. And I'd like to see more of that in games generally. But I'm even
okay with when they have those accessibility settings available, but they disable any achievements or something. It's like, look, you can play the game. We're not gonna give you all the cool stuff if you do it in that mode, but you can go all the way through the game in easy mode.
I think that's bullshit, frankly.
Really?
Because you're still making an underclass of people who can't, who are being left out.
Huh.
And
yes, that's my opinion on that.
Interesting.
For a single player game like Deadbolt, what does it fucking matter?
Well,
Whether you
yeah.
beat it on easy
Yeah.
mode or you beat it on ball-bustingly hard mode, you still beat the game.
I
Yeah.
think I think it's kind of interesting to have, even if you have like some achievements available but others not available. I think that we should reward people that are willing to like go into hard mode. Like that's something to like shoot for. That's something that you should, there's something kind of fun about being like, okay, well, I'm enjoying this game in easy mode. It's a really fun game, but like I really want this extra cookie that is totally inconsequential to the gameplay at all. Like has no impact on
Yeah. So
like my
have an
enjoyment.
achievement that's beating it on hard mode. Lots of games have that. Hard
Yeah, that's
mode,
kinda what I'm
nightmare
talking
mode,
about. Yeah, like-
legendary mode. But that doesn't
Yeah.
mean like that people who beat the game on normal or easy don't get achievements.
Oh, okay. So maybe I need to be more clear. I think that having achievements for being in a harder mode is the right solution to that. I'm not saying you should get 0 achievements, but like being able to disable some achievements for having, if it's like, okay, I'm going to enable easy mode. Okay, cool. You can do that. You can play all the way through the game, but some of the achievements that would have been available to you are no longer available to you because you're in easy mode.
See, and I still think that phrasing it that way is kind of terrible. Like, if there's an achievement that says you beat it on the hardest difficulty, cool. That is an achievement that you can show that you beat it on the hardest difficulty. Achievements like you killed X amount of demons on the hardest difficulty in this level, and challenges like that. Fine. I think that's fine because, yes, if you're not going to play it, that will reward someone who wants to play on hard mode. But to say, well, you won't get the achievements for X, Y, and Z if you're playing on easy, like you have to play hard mode for that, I think that's kind of dumb. And I don't
feel
like
like-
that. I think
feel
if you
like
want to have specific hard mode challenges, fine, go ahead. If you want an Elden Ring achievement that says you've played level 1, you've never leveled up, a no damage challenge run, like you have an achievement for that. I'm not saying that there is. I don't think there is. But I mean, people challenge themselves like that anyway. Like, that's fine. Not everyone is going to do that anyway, but the people who want the challenge will try. But to like phrase it as we are locking you out of achievements because you're not playing on hard mode is, I think, the wrong way to say it.
Yeah.
If you have achievements for a hard mode, that's fine. But like having, like, for example, you're playing on easy mode, we're not going to give you the story achievements because you can only get the story achievements on hard mode or the intended developer difficulty mode. That's bullshit.
I'm
Interesting.
I'm inclined to agree with that because it, unfortunately, with achievements like that, it's really misusing the idea of achievements. The idea of an achievement, at least the philosophy of achievements that I go with, is you want to encourage your players to play a very specific playstyle. Like,
Okay.
if in the Elden Ring example, you're beating the game on level 1, that's going to be fucking hard, and not a lot of people are going to do it. That's going to be an uber rare achievement. Perfect. You want them to play as level 1, doing it the hardest the way they could. Another example would be like playing on, I don't know, Thief. I'm talking about Thief the Metal Age and Thief the Dark Project, not Thief 4 or whatever they called it. In that game, the harder difficulties basically cut off some of your tools. I think that's a good way to encourage the player to play in a different playstyle, because in those games you can be a murder hobo, and that's perfectly acceptable on the easier difficulties. And achievements kind of force that there as well. It's another tool for the same end.
I guess maybe what I, just to make sure that we're all kind of on the same base, because for me, what I'm kind of imagining is obviously specifically Deadbolt. To me, if hard mode is really just the mode that the only mode we have right now, like if that's just
Yeah, that's accurate.
that is what it is. So I think if your game developer creates a game and they say, okay, this is how I want the game to be played, and then someone says, hey, that's great, I like that, you're into that, but I'm not. I want something a little bit easier. I think maybe in that situation, for a game like Deadbolt specifically, putting in like okay, we'll let you play the game, but we're gonna ramp down the difficulty in a significant way. I think it's acceptable to disable some of the achievements, because if the game is meant to be played in a certain way, which means there's a certain level of a challenge to reach those achievements, and let's say those achievements are significantly easier. So like for your example, let's say there's an achievement for, I don't know, I'm just gonna make something up. killing the least number of people. This is all gonna be made up. Let's say this, like killing the least number of people to achieve a goal. So like you're able to like sneak and run past all the other people and just get your target and then get out. And then let's say one of the easy modes. Again, this is all made up. But like let's say one of the easy modes is like you're essentially invulnerable. So you're kind of in like a story mode sort of thing where you can take your time. I think in those kinds of situations you have to be very careful about your achievements, because if the quote unquote easy mode makes that achievement just ludicrously easy to acquire, where that achievement is really hard to acquire in the quote unquote normal mode, that doesn't work, because then everyone's just going to switch into easy mode, get the achievement, and come back. That's kind of what I mean. That's kind of what I was kind of getting at.
I still disagree with you. And here's
Really?
why. Yes.
Okay.
So
I do want to hear this.
here's kind of what you're suggesting. I understand what you are saying. I'll lead with that. I do understand. It's not a matter of not understanding. However, I think you are looking at it in a way where there's sort of this weight on developer intent. And if the developer's intent is for this to be a very challenging experience and you have to play the way that we have deigned it on the intended difficulty mode, which, using Deadbolt as an example, is this one, it's very hard. Not everybody's going to be able to play it. Then don't have difficulty modes. Don't have an easy mode. You have decided that your game is accessible to a certain set of people who can play it this way. And that's fine, but I think that by sort of saying like, oh, well, it's sort of like, oh, do you want a cookie? Is kind of the mentality that has, where it's like, oh, well, we're going to lock you out of, assuming they're not challenge achievements, like you have done X and Y on the hardest difficulty. It feels like you are leaving people out because someone says, oh, well, why can't I get this achievement? I beat that level. It's like, oh, well, you didn't play the game it was intended to be played. It's sort of like, oh, well, you're graduating, but we're not going to give you your diploma because you had to go to the tutoring center and you had to have help and you needed all of these study aids because you have a learning disability, or, you don't study good, or you have ADHD and need just a little bit of help and a little bit of extra, whatever. English is your second language. It still creates this haves and have-nots, right? And I think that if you're separating out achievements that way, I think it's fine if it's like, beat the game at all, for example, an achievement. Beat the game at all. Beat the game on normal difficulty. Beat the game on hard difficulty. Beat the game on nightmare difficulty. That's fine. People who want to try and get it on nightmare difficulty but can't do it, like, okay, like that was the challenge. The challenge is try to get through on nightmare difficulty. Challenge modes like, defeat this many enemies in this level at all, whether or not you're on easy or hard. Okay, cool. Anyone can get that. But if you have something that's like, specifically a hard mode difficulty thing, like kill X amount of enemies on hard mode on this level, that's a challenge achievement. Not everyone's going to do it, but the people who really, really want to get that achievement will try and get that achievement if they like the game enough. But you're not locking someone out of base level achievements. You completed the game. You completed this chapter of the story. I think that like turning off achievements for like an easy difficulty is sort of like saying, well, you're just not good enough for our game, so we'll let you play it, but you won't have anything to show for it.
Interesting. I guess I've played a number of games. I tend to play a lot of games on easy mode. So I've played a lot of games that, you put it into easy mode and then you get a little like pop-up that says, hey, totally cool, you can play this game, but just so you know, like significant numbers of achievements will be disabled in this mode. And I'm like, I don't care. I've never been the kind of person to like go for achievements. So maybe for me personally, I'm just kind of like, yeah, whatever. I'm here to play the game. I'm here to enjoy the experience. I could not care less about the little pop-up that says, good job.
Well,
so maybe that's just me.
That does actually bring up a good question, though, Tom. Like, on those games, are you playing solely in single player, or these multiplayer? These games have multiplayer aspects with them.
I honestly couldn't think of any specific example. I know I've seen that, but I can't point to a game. But here's a question, though, real quick, just before I get derailed. Here's my question. If we take the exact example that I gave you before, and instead of saying we disable a certain number of achievements, we just take the achievements we would have disabled and add in hard mode to the end of every single one of those achievements.
I mean, are all of your achievements then going to be, in this hypothetical situation, beat this level on this mode? Or do you have double achievements where you have one that says beat this level and then beat this level on hard mode.
I don't know if they need to all have a easy and then hard mode. I think that there could be like, you can say you have some achievements that are available when you're in, quote unquote easy mode. And then in hard mode, there's more achievements available that expand on that say something like let's say in easy mode, just as an example, you have 2 achievements you can get. Kill this guy without using a nice gun and beat the level. And then in hard mode, you have those are obviously both you can get those achievements. And then you also have kill only that guy without killing anyone else in hard mode.
Well, I think there's another mechanic that you could easily add, especially in like Deadbolt as an example of kill only Ibzan on the last level.
Mm-hmm.
As a challenge, even with the additions of the accessibility that we proposed, it would still be hard. But if you wanted to kind of, so your intent was clear on that, you could say only kill Ibzan without alerting any other undead. That would be hard even with the addition of the other stuff. And that would just kind of resolve the in easy mode, in hard mode sort of thing.
Yeah,
Fair.
because that would ultimately be a challenge achievement, right? Because you are challenging the player, no matter what difficulty they're on, to something incredibly difficult for that level.
And more specifically, you're encouraging them to play in a play style that you're betting dollars to donuts they won't actually do. Which is kind of the point of being a game developer. You want to encourage, or not a game developer, but kind of more the point of being, or putting achievements in. You want them to play in a different play style. So in this example, just putting that without alerting other undead, that would make it extremely hard even with assists. And I would be fine with that. Like, you did it. You deserve that cookie. I don't care if it was in easy mode.
Mm-hmm.
Fair.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's just my philosophy on achievements, though. So, I'm a very hobbyist developer. So, keep that in mind.
No, I definitely get it. I can see what you're saying. I think for the most part our argument has somewhat devolved into semantics.
Maybe.
I think the devil is in the details a little bit.
Well,
but I mean, I think
with any design improvement, it is going to be in the details. So yeah, I mean that's
well,
fair.
True. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I don't know. I think part of the problem too may be just that my personal opinion of achievements, they have never really done anything for me. For me, it's more of a like, I'll get the little pop-up that's like, you unlocked this achievement. I'm just kind of like, oh, huh, okay. But I'm not an achievement chaser. So like, for me, it's more of just like oh, neat. And not oh man, I'm going to work my tail off for this thing. So
I feel like
maybe that's part of it.
I feel like that's part of Forza, though. They literally shower you with achievements in that game.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I play a lot more than Forza. So.
I'm just saying, like, 1,000 hours in Forza, yeah, that would desensitize me to achievements, too. It already partially has, honestly.
Again, I play a lot more than Forza, and achievements came out long before Horizon. I was playing Forza Horizon, and for me, they've never meant anything to me. I'm not an achievement chaser, which is fine. Some people aren't. I think maybe because I'm not that person, I don't put a lot of importance on them.
Right.
And I guess the few times where I have been like, because here's the difference. For some people, they actively seek them out. For me, I get kind of excited when they just happen by happenstance. Like, I'm not looking for it. It just is like a little boop. Hey, you did this thing that's really rare. And I'm like, oh, cool. And so it's kind of fun to make them a little bit less accessible. And for me, because like when they happen, it's kind of, you get more of an impact when you're kind of like, oh, son of a gun. I did a thing that most people don't do. That's cool. If they're really accessible, then it feels more kind of like, whatever. When it's like, to me, like an achievement should be an achievement, not like a, hey, you did the thing that like literally every single person that has bought this game did.
Turn on the game. Those achievements are meaningless.
That's not an achievement. That's like, great, I bought the game. Cool.
Well, but I think that's still a very subjective point of view. Because,
that's what I'm,
for some people, it's like, oh, I beat this level. That makes me feel really good. Like, I feel accomplished. Like, even though, like, for some people, it might be oh, whatever, I beat the level, cool, I got an achievement. Every game does that. But for some people, I mean, it's like, oh, I did that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're seeking out challenge achievements, it's like, oh, I did this challenge and I feel like I did something. I can say like, cool, and the game gave me a clap on the back, like, good job, you did the thing. So I think it's just, from your point of view, it's just sort of like, oh, I just did something that literally everyone else in the game did. Like, for some people that means more than just, I just did something that everyone else in the game. Oh, everybody who plays this game gets this achievement. Like for some people that does mean something. It can be a dopamine spike, or it just makes them feel good. They can say, look, I have my little merit badge card here with all of the achievements for this game I really like. I even did some challenge achievements. And everyone's going to be kind of feel differently about that. And I feel that for those people who do enjoy achievement hunting, because surprise achievements are cool, but some people are going to seek them out. But
Sure,
for others
yeah.
who are like, oh, this particular level for me was really challenging, I got an achievement, cool. Whereas someone else didn't find that level so challenging.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to like divvy up that particular achievement, if it's a finish the level thing, by difficulty mode, assuming you're not having any kind of, like multiples for one level kind of thing. Like you finished it on easy, you finished it on normal, you finished it on hard. I feel like it just sort of is like, like it feels like you're leaving the people out who wouldn't do that. Again, like challenge achievements are something different because those are things that you would have to seek out because you like the game or you like achievement hunting. Not everyone
or
will
you're
get
just
those
insane
achievements.
and play games in an insane way, and then by
Yeah.
chance.
Yeah.
yeah, I totally get it.
I think there's actually an interesting point to be made here that achievements are kind of one of those topics that can potentially be divisive, along with accessibility, sadly enough, because there will be the inevitable gatekeepers of, oh, you didn't play to X achievement, you aren't a real player of X game. And
You didn't get the hard mode achievement, so you're not a real player of the game.
and
Yeah.
So, not to derail you, that brought up a point. So, here's the question. Is gatekeeping worse when you create an easy mode, thereby making it so some players are going to use it, and then the gatekeepers can say, well, you didn't really play the game because you were playing it on easy mode? Or is it better to leave a game kind of like Deadbolt did, where it's like, look, this is the game. Like, play it or don't. This is the game. Because it's kind of harder to gatekeep in that regard. Because it's like, well, I didn't finish the game because it wasn't for me. Okay, no gatekeeping for you. So I mean, I'm not defending it. I'm just kind of like, I'm wondering, does creating all of these like really like making games much easier for everyone to play, does that also open the door to some gatekeeping?
well,
No, gatekeeping's going to exist no matter what.
yeah.
Well,
And
you're
it
probably right
shouldn't,
about that,
no
yeah.
matter for what reason.
Does it exacerbate it? Maybe that's a better way of putting it.
I think people are going to be assholes no matter what. They'll just find a reason to do it. Like, I think if you're worried about people gatekeeping a game, like, I don't think that, oh, well, we shouldn't have easy mode because people will gatekeep more and people won't want to try and engage with the game. I think that's bad reasoning because people are going to find a reason to gatekeep anyway. Oh, you can't play this game? You couldn't get past the tutorial? I feel embarrassed admitting that I couldn't get past the tutorial of this game because it's like, oh, there's someone out there. Oh, well, this person, they're not a real gamer. Like, what the hell do they think they're doing? They're just talking about it, like an earlier podcast where I've said, like, I like games. Games are fun. I usually just play for the story. If there's an easy mode, I'll use it because I don't necessarily, unless it's a game I really like, I don't necessarily like want the challenge. I want to experience the story. And that's like been a thing forever, oh, well, I couldn't play this game. I watched a playthrough on YouTube. It's like, oh, well, you're not a real fan if you watch someone's Let's Play. Like,
Yeah.
play the game. It's going to happen no matter what.
That's true. That is 100% true. I think the thing that's tough about it is like, if you're the kind of person that wants, and I'm not necessarily this person. This is like a devil's advocate argument here. If you're the kind of person that wants the extreme challenge, and therefore, because there's a huge challenge attached, there's also a prestige of achieving that thing. And I think for those people that want that really big challenge, does it feel a bit like your experience of achieving that thing gets watered down when there's also this mode that just makes it like super easy to get to that same place.
So don't use that mode if you're that kind of player. I'm not saying you are, Tom. This is the rhetorical.
No, yeah, sure,
this
yeah.
rhetorical person you've set up. Like, why does it matter to them? Why would it matter? Like, you play it on the challenge mode. You play it on the hardest setting, and you still get those achievements. Someone else playing on easy mode doesn't affect the fact that you yourself, hypothetical person, played it on the hardest difficulty and got all the challenge achievements and finished it. Like, this sort of like, because this is a thing that's been talked about with like every time From Software releases a game, that's the thing that people say, like, oh, well, it waters down the achievement of beating the game if there's difficulty modes. And it's like, no, it doesn't. You just play it on a harder difficulty. You don't use the accessibility stuff. Like, that has no standing on what you're doing.
Where does a
you
badge
played the game
of
on the
honor?
hardest.
Seriously.
Yeah, it's like, oh my god, like you go on Steam and you got your achievement on Steam that says only 1% of players ever got this achievement. Like, there's your badge of honor. You got an achievement for a challenge that only 1% of players have ever gotten. And it glows now. Like, I didn't used to do that, but now they glow. Like, you can look at your achievements and say, wow, I got the glowy achievement. That's super cool. Not everyone's going to, only 1% of players is going to have this achievement. Good for you. That's awesome. I'm so happy for you getting your challenge. I'm not going to go for that because I don't want that kind of challenge. But it's cool also that I got all of the all of the achievements that 60% of players got on Steam or 80%. Like, I don't care. I look at that and I go, look at all, I beat all of the levels. I got the achievement for beating the game. Hell, I got the stealth achievement in Deus Ex Human Revolution. Like, how in the hell did that happen? You know, like, I don't even know. Like, it's sort of having those modes. It's weird to me that people like attach so much of like, you know, this achievement is mine because there's no easy mode. It's like, you wouldn't play it on easy mode. It doesn't make the hardest difficulty easier to have an easy mode. You just don't play easy mode. Just don't do it. Like, I don't like this book. I hate this book. I'm going to like finish it and then I'm going to write a horrible review. It's like, if you didn't like the book, just put it down. Don't finish it. Like, if you don't like it, just walk away. Just say, that's not for me, and leave. You know, it's like a similar thing where it's like, what? Why does it matter that you're going to like waste all this energy complaining about somebody wanting an easy mode in a game so that they can play it? Like, it doesn't affect you. You're still going to play the game how you play the game. It's not like, you know, people are calling for make Souls games easier. Like, no, it's just for saying like have accessibility options so more people can play them. While the same people who like the extra challenge can still play it the way they want to play it.
And kind of to that point, that was a beautiful rant, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
One of the things about accessibility is ideally it's going to be invisible to most people.
Yeah.
If you and I, Tom, had access to the accessibility options in Deadbolt, we probably wouldn't do it. And if there were achievements for completing the game and then achievements on, I don't know, like how Spelunky 2 does it, where if you're really into it, you can go after the story to the, what do they call it, Endless Ocean or something, where it's just 97 more Spelunky levels that are ball-bustingly hard, but you don't lock off the story that way. Like,
that's fair.
Everybody has to suffer through the story of Spelunky. And that is a hard thing, even with all the accessibility options that they offer in as a way to make it easier on you. But for those that really, really get into the game, they can grind their way through those 99 levels on top of the story. And that's fine. Like, more power to those people. I will never see that Endless Ocean. Ever. I can't even see the jungle half the time. So, you know, I'm on the lower end of the skill level for Spelunky, let's be honest.
I've never even played it.
Oh, it's hard. Just going to leave it at that. But I think that at the same time, the accessibility that was baked into Spelunky makes me want to keep going back to it regardless. So accessibility just means that I can be like, oh man, look at that person. They are doing really well. I can't do like 90% of what they're doing on Twitch reaction. Makes me appreciate them more. Maybe a little bit of jealousy too. But that's me, not achievement options. That being said, I think if those were in Deadbolt, but they weren't like pointed out,
It might be okay.
yeah, it'd be fine. Like,
Yeah.
one of the things that Deadbolt does do is the custom levels. You can
Yeah.
make your own custom level if you want to make a really hard challenge. Custom levels are a great way for the real enthusiast, right? Because I don't think, like, I'm an enthusiast for Deadbolt, but I don't think I would play a custom level. Because there's some levels that I don't want to play again in the base game. And I know that the custom levels are harder than that. So it's like, hard pass. Yeah. But that's fine. That's what the enthusiasm's for. And
Sure.
yeah, I think achievements are a very sticky topic because of different attitudes on how to use them.
I didn't even know how sticky that topic could be. I walked into a landmine there.
That's kind of the glorious thing about talking about Deadbolt, which doesn't have... I mean, it does kind of have in-game achievements, but they're the, hey, you get random drop, here's a cookie here's a lore cookie sort of thing, which isn't necessarily what I think a good achievement would be.
Fair.
Honestly. But that's, as I said, my stance on the achievement issue.
Just to prove how little I pay attention to achievements, are there even achievements on Steam for that game?
On Steam, I don't think so. Let me check real quick, because I'm genuinely curious.
This could be a very funny discovery.
Yeah. Well,
very quickly.
So it's interesting that you bring it up, because in Deadbolt itself, there are actually achievements in game. So like, it wouldn't be too hard to like bubble that up to Steam. But I don't necessarily think the developer put those in.
Interesting.
There are achievements on Steam.
Well, the more you know.
Yeah, 24?
Holy cow. I'm sure I've unlocked some. I just don't think I ever noticed.
Yeah.
You were busy getting killed. That's fine.
I was very busy getting killed.
Yeah.
And sometimes killing, occasionally.
Yeah, I'm just giving you a sass.
It even says that you have one. You have an achievement, Tom.
I do?
Yeah.
What
Non-good.
do I have an achievement for?
Kill Puff without using the Tommy gun.
I remember that popping up. That was one of the ones where I was like, that's an achievement?
Yep.
Neat!
Let's see. So just for interest's sake, here's what the achievements are. Let's see. Conquest. Earn every achievement. Famine. Beat the entire game within 1 hour without quitting. Death. Beat the entire game without dying or quitting.
Who are these people?
War. Get a 5-star rating on all missions. Professional. Clear a stage with only headshot kills. Clocked in. Clear the first mission. I don't have that because I never did it. Dethroned. Dethroned. Kill an undead using the toilet. Coinage. Buy a weapon from Charon. Cassette culture. Collect all memory tapes. Traditional. Clear a stage with only melee weapons. Nah, I'm good. Kill Puff without using the Tommy gun. Pugilist. Melee a bouncer to death. Baba Yaga. Clear the boogeyman without being seen. Zombie Kings. Cleared. Clear all Zombie Kings missions. Acrobat. Kill a vampire midair. Let the dead rest. Clear the Bloody Mary without letting any vampires revive. Quid pro quo. Kill Amber with a melee weapon and Evelyn with a ranged weapon. 1,000-Year Royals. Cleared. Clear all 1,000-Year Royals missions. Pirouette. Kill a sergeant mid-spin. Grave Rubber. Destroy a body as it's being revived. Collateral damage. Clear Timur the Tinkerer using only trap kills. The Dredged. Cleared. Clear all dredged missions. Le Sniper du Coeur. Clear Vale's sniper nest using only headshots. From the Shadows. Clear Ibzan without being seen once.
So they do have that achievement. Oh. Huh.
Yep. And and they do have achievements for clearing the first mission and clearing each chapter. But all the rest are challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, the rest are like play in a very weird way, like kill people using a toilet, which is funny.
Yeah.
You're gonna do that anyway. That's a surprise.
Which is cool. Yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely going to do that one, and it is a great achievement to achieve.
Yeah.
I now that you bring that up, I remember that being one of those like, oh hey.
Yeah. Yep. But like
Yep.
Cassette culture, that is one that is not worth grinding. I can say that one with certainty. I really hate some of the levels because of that.
And we just told you all of the story, so you don't even need them. Go look them up if you want to actually read them for yourself.
Exactly.
Or
Yeah.
grind them out if you really want to. If you want to achieve, achievement hunt, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
More power to you. That's
Apparently,
awesome.
this game has plenty of achievement grinding. If it thinks you can play this game all the way through, start to finish, without dying, get ready to grind.
I mean, the speedrunners have famine because the speed run's like what, 23 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Which is
So
Which, if you've ever watched it, it is like a sight to behold. The whole
it is
time
a
you're kind of
very
like,
cool.
is this seriously possible? Like, are you a robot?
It is a very cool speed game just to watch people just how precise they are and how quick. It's very
It's
cool for that.
amazing. Yeah, totally amazing.
I personally highly recommend this game. I don't know about you two.
Here's the thing. Would I go out and like seek out this game and buy it for myself just for fun? No. Because you like encouraged me to play this, it's great. It's definitely one of those like it took me out of my comfort zone and I enjoyed it types of games.
That's fair.
So
Yeah.
I think it's really, really cool. Will I be revisiting it on a regular basis? Probably not. But I probably will revisit it from time to time when I'm, in the mood. So it was a surprise for me.
And I abstain. I didn't get past I just barely got past the tutorial after a very long time. However, I feel that if you have heard what we've described, or you go look it up and, look at some gameplay and you think you think it looks like a game for you and that you might like to try it, I would say go for it. Because I think if you can, like, if this is the kind of game you like and, you can perform at that level of skill that the game asks of you, like, I think you're going to have a good time and it'll be a challenge and it'll probably be fun for you. But would I recommend it? I don't know. Depends on if you like this kind of game or not and if it sounds interesting.
That's fair. That is totally fair.
Yeah. I guess I'm coming from a very biased source, or very biased place rather, but I absolutely adore this game with the style that it has. So
Oh, this thing is dripping with style.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
I'm always a sucker for style though, so make of that what you will. I think we've ranted about this game enough. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, we probably have done.
Let's do some pluggables. Where can people find you, Devin?
You can find me on the internet in places. I am Marroweird. I can't even pronounce my own name. Everybody pronounces it differently. That's my fault for choosing something in Old English that nobody can pronounce. Marrowyrd. Weird. It's got an umlaut in that Y. Anyway, MEREWYRD. I kind of have a social media hiatus, but I'm around if that's a thing.
And how about you, Tom? Where can people find you?
I am on YouTube and Instagram under the handle Tomakaze, and it's spelled wrong. So TOMAKZE. And I don't do a whole lot of video game stuff, but I've certainly got a whole lot of car stuff, car audio stuff, and other random things on there. I am totally inactive on Twitter, so it's the same name, but don't bother.
Fair enough. Yeah, and people can find me on Twitter as JCSirron, JCSIRRON. I usually rant about video game related stuff, so if you want to either enjoy it or yell at me furiously about my stance on anything, please reach out to me. Well, we've been the Adventure Mechanics. I'm Chandler,
I'm Devin.
And I'm Tom.
and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.